Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. So this is Consortium, Part 1, Loki, Chapter 17, Marcia. Wow, said Jack. I was giving them the summary of what I had seen in the videos. I didn't fully describe what had happened to Alpha's captain, but considering what Loki and Jack initially saw with the nanopickets, I didn't think I needed to. He looked shocked, and so did Loki's avatar, on the screen next to the table. Was there anything from the data that showed what kind of energy was emanating from the vines? I didn't see anything out of the ordinary in my scans, Loki asked. No, I said. I think we need to go back to Alpha and do some more investigation. See if we can get more detailed readings. Loki had a look of fear for a moment. Jack picked up on it and said, We don't have to go close if you don't want, Loki. Marsh and I could take a demon out with your submind. I nodded. Spot. Spot? Jack and Loki asked together. Spot. You named your submind Spot? Jack asked again with a grin. I couldn't just keep calling him submind. Besides, he kind of has a dog-like personality, I replied. Dog-like? Asked Loki. He fetches. Granted, it's not a stick, but he still fetches. Loki looked a little confused. Jack concentrated for a moment, then Loki laughed. I see. Dogs must be very interesting beings. Haven't seen a dog in years, Jack mused. I nodded. Neither have I. My parents had one that looked like a big white ball of fluff the last time I saw them. She was more of a princess, though, and refused to play much. It hurt to think of the last time I saw my parents, and I couldn't imagine what they were feeling now. They should have heard the news about me and Malcolm by now. Tears starting to come, so I pushed the thoughts away. I brought my attention back to Jack and Loki. It might be better if I go on the demon by myself. We don't know what else we'll find on the station, and I'd rather you not get panicked again, Loki, since it'll affect Jack. That sounds like a... Whoa. Jack closed his eyes. What's wrong, Jack? Loki and I asked together. The room suddenly started spinning, and a whole shitload of data just went over my eyes. He tried to stand but couldn't. Not good. Jack, Loki said. Don't panic. I'll get Jack to the med bay. It may be a side effect from being in the core with you. We can scan him in more detail and see what's happening. I moved around the table and helped Jack to stand. Can you walk? If I don't open my eyes, Jack said. Right, I'll get you there. I put my arm around him and he put his arm over my shoulder, and we staggered to the lift. Loki made the lift go a little slower than normal so as not to jostle Jack too much. We got out at the med bay and I got Jack into the bio bed. He gave a sigh as he laid down and Loki started the diagnostics. I watched the readouts. He's dehydrated and has low blood sugar. I'm going to start with water and glucose, Loki said. I nodded and pulled a chair out of the wall. It had been less than a week since Jack had gone into the core, and he seemed to be fine. It did make me wonder, though. Loki, I said, could this be a side effect from being in the core with you? I don't know, Marcia. No human has touched a live core before. As far as I know. Maybe we should do some brain scans, he said. The bed detached from the wall and rolled by itself down the hall. I followed after, and we came to a large, mostly empty room, with 3 circular tubes that were large enough to fit a biobed. The bed slid into the nearest tube. What's going on? Asked Jack as he opened his eyes a bit and lifted his head. I looked into the tube. We're doing a brain scan, Jack. We're looking to see if there's some after effects of you touching the core. Oh, okay, he said, and put his head back down, closing his eyes. The door of the tube closed, and whirring and mechanical sounds started. Oh my, said Loki. This is most unusual. Unusual good or unusual bad? I'm not sure, Marcia. The nanobots have incorporated themselves into over 50% of his neurons and have started traveling to other parts of his body. In fact, if I compare the scan I did when we did the enhancements, I'd say that they were reversing some of the effects of aging and residual scar tissue. But nanobots need energy. They usually use the body's own energy for what they do, which is why a captain needs extra nutrition in the first couple of weeks or so after the procedure. What does this mean, though? I didn't think that the nanobots could replicate like that after the procedure. Or at least, that's what I assumed from what you told us. The tube opened and the biobed rolled out. They're not supposed to. So I'm not sure what this means, Marcia, Loki said. I opened my mouth, but Jack held up a hand. I heard. I don't know what the effect is yet either, but I can tell you I'm starving now that I've had some fluids. Are you hungry? He tried to get up, but the bed started rolling towards the common area. The back of the bed came up to allow him to sit up. Jack chuckled, and so did I. Okay, Loki, I'll sit here. Good, said Loki. I laughed louder then. You two are so married, as Lulu would say. Jack blushed bright pink. What? Said Loki. Married? That made me laugh even harder, which made Jack blush even more and give me a look. Then he got the look he got when he was talking to Loki. Really? Loki asked out loud. Why do you say that, Marcia? It took me until the common room to stop laughing enough to actually speak. Well, I started, but giggled again and wiped my eyes. I took a deep breath and started again. Well, the way you two act together is like how some married couples act. You finish each other's sentences. Jack does what you tell him to do when he knows you're right. And now with the bed, you moved it to make the point that Jack really shouldn't be walking around until he's had more food and water. And he didn't fight you. It reminds me a little of my grandparents, actually. I started to chuckle again. Oh, are we married then? Loki asked, as food started printing. A thick shake of some sort came out of the drink dispenser. I took it out when it was finished and handed it to Jack. Jack blushed even harder. Speaking as a chaplain, I suppose legally by Unity and maybe Survey, you're not, but there's no real law out here. I suppose if you want to consider it so, you are. I smiled wide. If you really want a ceremony, though, I'd be happy to do it for you. I think we might want to talk about it, said Jack. Do you want to be married, Jack? Loki asked. Jack stammered, then took a drink of the shake. I was trying hard to be all professional, but it was getting difficult to keep a straight face. This is something you should talk about first. I paused to stifle a giggle. In private. Oh, okay. Can we talk about it, Jack? Yes, said Jack. I'll leave you to it then. Before that, though, are we going back to Alpha? Yes, Marcia. We'll be leaving once Jack is okay. Right, I said. I'm gonna go analyze some more data with Spot. I walked to the lift and giggled all the way to my room. They didn't mention anything more about being married the next day. Loki transported us back to Alpha by morning. When I went to breakfast, Jack had produced a feast enough to feed at least 4 people. This is quite the spread, I said as I sat down and began to fill a plate. Jack nodded and finished swallowing. Apparently my body needs quite a bit of fuel. I hope this doesn't go on too long, though. It feels hard to keep up. He looked thoughtful for a moment, had a few more bites of breakfast, and said, Yesterday was a bit weird. Oh? How so? Laughing and being silly after you told us about the captain dying and me nearly passing out. It's like we kind of took a holiday with our brains. Jack looked a little worried. And if he was worried, I knew Loki was wondering about it too. That actually is a normal reaction to trauma, grief, and stress, I said. Sometimes the mind needs to take a break and not think about the situation for a while. Being sad all the time and not laughing or not remembering good and joyful things can be just as harmful as not acknowledging your grief. Besides, everyone processes things in their own way and in their own time. Jack nodded and looked thoughtful, and I wondered if he was going over it with Loki. I tucked into my breakfast and let them think about it. After breakfast, I went down to the demon bays. I opened the docking tube to the demon, entered the ship, and began pre-flight checks. It wasn't strictly necessary, but I had enough Unity fleet drilled into me to double-check equipment on flights like this. I brought the data pads with collated data from Spot with me, and Loki had stocked it with food and water. We are about a quarter of an AU from the station, Marcia. The jump drive on the Demon is limited in distance and accuracy, so it will take you 4 hours to approach the station after you jump. Spot has all the coordinates and will pilot for you. I didn't know how long you wanted to stay out there, so I put enough good rations for a week and emergency rations for a month, just in case. Thank you, Loki, and don't worry, I'll be okay. I have my trusty Spot with me, don't I? I know, but given what happened to the inhabitants and... He paused. I don't want anything to happen to you. I'll stay out of trouble, Loki, for your sake. I'll contact you or have Spot do it every 4 hours when I'm awake. There won't be much delay, so we can have near real-time check-ins. I can also tell Spot that if I become unconscious when I'm not sleeping normally, that he's to take me right back here. That's a good idea, thank you. I heard footsteps come down the tube. Jack came up to the door of the Demon and said, "Everything check out?" I nodded. Yes, and Loki's given me plenty of food and water. There is one thing I didn't check yet. Spot, are you in the Demon? Yes, Marcia. A copy of my instance has been installed. Are we leaving soon? I gave a chuckle. Yes, Spot, in a few minutes. Spot gave a trill in reply. Jack also gave a chuckle. Okay, I see why you named him Spot. You ready? Ready, I said. See you soon, he said, and stepped away from the airlock, which closed. I sat in the pilot's seat. Okay, Spot, let's get going. Acknowledged, Spot said. The docking tube retracted, and we pulled out of the bay. The station was just as eerily dead as the first time we saw it. I had Spot display our approach on the screen in the Demon. There were another 2 hours before I reached the station proper, and after reviewing the initial data again, I decided to take a nap. Spot, I'm going to take a nap. Wake me when we reach the station. Yes, Marcia. I pulled down the 0G bunk from its place on the wall across from the gel tank and zipped myself into the sleeping bag, since I knew that when we stopped we'd be in 0G. I tried not to think about it too hard and closed my eyes. Well, Marcia, you've got an interesting puzzle here, said a man's voice. I opened my eyes to see Malcolm standing next to the bunk looking at me. You're not real. Malcolm's dead, I told his ghost. I'm real enough. Since when do you deny the spirits of the dead? I winced. Okay, hello, Malcolm. He smiled at me. So, like I said, you've got an interesting puzzle here. I smiled back. Seeing as you're a spirit now, any hints? This'll be more than you think it will be, he said. More than humans will understand. Some of them, anyway. Oh? He shrugged. You're where you're supposed to be, although I think you already knew that. Cryptic much? I said. He laughed, but it sounded more like a trill than his real laugh, which was strange. I heard a voice calling my name. Marcia, we have reached the station. You asked to be woken up. I opened my eyes. Malcolm's spirit was gone, and I wasn't sure if I was seeing... Malcolm's spirit was gone, and I wasn't sure if seeing him was real or a dream. I rubbed my eyes. How long was I asleep, Spot? 2.5 hours. Huh, I said. It's been a long time since I had a dream visitation like that, where I wasn't sure if I was awake or not. Not since I was training with Max. I took a few deep breaths and zipped myself out of the bag, then pushed myself over to the pilot's area. On screen, Spot. The screen came to life, showing only part of the station because we were so close. The vine pattern was trying to pull me in again, and it took all my training to keep myself on the task at hand. Spot, send in the pickets. Acknowledged. Are you going to deny what you feel, sis? Said a voice behind me. I spun around. Cheryl was standing in the cockpit behind me. What is it you think I feel? I asked the spirit. You know what this feels like. If you surrender to it, you'll know more. A trill and a minor key sounded. Query not understood. Please restate your request, said Spot. I wasn't asking anything, Spot. For the time being, if I'm asking you specifically, I'll say your name first, okay? Acknowledged. I looked again where Cheryl was standing. Yes, I know what this feels like, but can I trust it? Trust? Maybe. Or maybe we need to trust you. Damn spirits. I turned back to the screen. Wait a minute, trust me? I asked and spun her back around, but Cheryl's spirit was gone. Chapter 18. Marcia. The first day of investigation seemed agonizingly slow. Spot and I collected all the data that I could think of. Analysis of energy fields, atmospheric data from inside the station, blood composition of the bodies, power readings, and more. The hardest one was taking a sample of the vines themselves. They seemed to resist being cut and would actually shrink away from the cutting tools on the pickets. After a while, I gave up on getting a sample and just had a picket land on them. All it did was confirm that the material was indeed some sort of wood with a plant-like cellular structure. The only unusual thing about it was that it existed in space and seemed to have the ability to attach itself to a station. Fuck! I shouted in the cabin of the demon. All this is doing is confirming the data we already have. I looked at the picture of the station and vines, unwillingly drawn in by the pattern again. I let it take me in for a minute while my mind tried to think. You know where you need to go, said a voice in my head. I knew it was a spirit, but I couldn't figure out which one. I was resisting that pull, but at this point I had a feeling that whoever the spirit was right. Spot, tell me again what the atmosphere and gravity is like in there. Gravity is approximately 0.75 g due to the slowing of rotation, as systems have declined. Atmosphere is not a total vacuum, depending on the area of the ship, but is not breathable due to several chemical releases and hull breaches, including the core. Several areas of the station are closed off and unstable. So if I went over there, I could get away with a pressure chute and helmet. Boarding the station is not recommended. Theoretically, Spot, I said, just wanting an answer. Yes, except for areas of the hull breach. I got up and floated back and forth in the demon, gently bouncing myself between the walls. No, I thought, I need to get over there. I need to see the patterns of how people died and what they did to each other. I knew I could never get the full scope of what happened if I didn't see it for myself. The pickets can only show so much at any given time. Spot, start preparations for transfer to the station. Boarding the station is not recommended, Spot said again. Understood, Spot. I'm overriding. Prepare for boarding. The minor trill sounded again, but all Spot said was, acknowledged. I moved to the back of the demon and started checks on the pressure suit. The light from the nanopicket in my helmet illuminated the dark hallway. I stood for a moment looking down the hall of Alpha Station, readjusting to gravity after the 0G of the demon. There was a body here and there, but the hallway was relatively clear. This is a residential section, right, Spot? Yes. Right. Approximately how many people were on this level? According to station records, 492. I let out a breath. So many dead, I thought. I kept walking down the hallway. The feeling of spirits being all around me intensified as soon as the nanopicket put me on the station. I kept seeing things out of the corner of my eyes. It was then I remembered the first captain's logs. They kept seeing things out of the corner of their eyes. What if it wasn't hallucinations? I thought. If these folks never had some sort of mystic tradition, then no one would have realized that it was possible to talk to spirits. If we found other stations that still had people alive, then I could teach the most afflicted ones how to work with the spirits instead of being afraid with them. I kept walking down the hall, looking into a couple of rooms as I went. I only saw either empty rooms or rooms filled with people who had died from some sort of attack. I turned away from a room that had held a family, all slumped over the table where they had been sharing a meal. Walking away from the door, I suddenly saw a little girl with golden hair and a white dress in front of me. I froze, waiting for her to do something, but all she did was put a finger to her lips, then beckon me to follow. She led me down the corridor to an area of the station that looked like communal space. There were more bodies here than before, making me wonder what this section of the station was used for. The little girl skipped down the corridor in front of me, then eventually stopped. She pointed as I drew closer, and I could see she was in front of a windowed area. When I caught up with her, I turned my lights to the window and nearly threw up. Babies. It looked like it had been a daycare area. I fell to my knees. This shouldn't have happened, I thought. The little girl came over and bent her face down to look at mine, seeming confused. She looked through the window again, then looked back at me. "Why?" she asked. I could hear her, regardless of the pressure suit, and while her voice sounded like a little girl's voice, there seemed to be something more behind it. It gave me chills. I stared at her for a moment, not sure how to answer, so I went with the simplest answer. Because all the air escaped the station. "Oh," she said. "People can't live without air?" "No, it kills them." "Why did they let the air out?" "I'm not sure. I'm trying to find out why." The girl nodded. "I tried to find out what was happening. I didn't want the babies to die. I tried to protect them, but the adults were scared of me." "No doubt, little one," I thought. "You scare me a bit, too." "Why were they scared of you?" I asked out loud. "Because all my friends were talking to them, too. They kept saying that my friends weren't really real. They got scared, then started yelling a lot. My friends tried to calm them down, saying that they were really there. I don't think they believed them." "Do you know what happened when the adults started to yell?" She nodded. "Some bad men yelled all over the ship. Then the babies died. I couldn't protect them." She turned to the window again, looking sad. I looked again, willing my stomach not to rebel. The babies were all in cribs, and only a few adults in the room with them. Are these the only adults trying to care for a room full of infants? I wondered if they had been gathered together in an attempt to protect them from the adults losing their minds. I cried freely, even if it wasn't a good idea to cry in your helmet. "You'll help the others," said the little girl. "You're not afraid of us." "Us?" She nodded again, then turned and ran down the hall. I got up off my knees and tried to follow, but as I followed her around the corner, she disappeared. "Who are you?" I yelled into the darkness. All I got in reply was a girlish giggle. I shuddered. "Spot, take me back," I said, and reached out my hand for the nanopicket. "You're not giving up now, Em, are you?" Malcolm asked. "No, I just need some time to rest." He nodded from the gel tank steps. "Good. You should go to the core." "Why?" "For Loki. He needs to know what happened." "I need to sleep, Malcolm. Spot, play some calming music." Quiet piano music started to play in the demon. I forced myself to drink a nutrition shake, all I could stomach after returning from the station, and strapped myself into the sleeping bag. Another spirit visitation wasn't what I wanted, so I closed my eyes on him. "All right, Em, we'll let you sleep," he said. I had a little time to think again about the use of the plural before sleep overtook me. A trilling sound woke me. "It is 0800, your requested rising time," said Spot. I groaned, but unzipped the sleeping bag anyway, took care of necessities, put on some clothes, and got a coffee from the drink dispenser. "Any messages, Spot?" "Loki and Jack asked for you to contact them when you woke up." I yawned, took a sip of my coffee from the straw of its pouch. Thank the gods for coffee, even if I have to drink it through a straw, I thought. "Connect me to Loki, Spot." "Working." A trill sounded, and the screen lit up, showing Jack's face. His quarters were in the background, and he was wrapped in the blanket he usually used on this couch. "Hey, Marcia, how are things going?" he asked. I yawned again, then replied, "All the readings we got from the download have been confirmed. Confirmed yesterday that the vines are resistant to cutting, so I couldn't take a sample." Took a sip of coffee to cover me for a bit, while I decided how to go over what happened yesterday. "Have we had any responses to the pickets yet?" "No," Loki said, sounding worried. "From my calculations, we still have some days before the first one should come back." I nodded. "That's okay. I could do with more time here to check things out. I want to try and analyze the core." "Thank you," said Loki. Jack's face reflected that thanks. "How are you doing, Jack?" I asked. "Still eating like a horse. It's getting tiring, and I have to eat what seems like constantly," he said with a sigh. "Maybe switch to only nutrition drinks between meals," I suggested. "Those are at least portable, and you can change the flavors more readily." "I can make them taste like anything you want. I have a great list of flavors from Sun Tzu," said Loki. Jack nodded. "That's not a bad idea." He eyed me a bit. "You okay?" "I didn't sleep all that well. It's grim business." He studied me for a minute more. "Okay, we'll talk to you later." "Right, talk to you later," I said, and the screen went blank. A trill sounded. "Query, why did you not tell them of your excursion into the station?" asked Spot, surprising me. I blinked. I wasn't sure how to answer him. It was the first time Spot had actually asked a question on his own. "Why do you ask?" "It was an omission." "Yes," I replied. "I didn't want to worry them." "What is worry?" Spot asked. I thought, this is interesting. He had never asked questions like this in the short time I'd been utilizing him, although Spot was a submind of Loki, who was more sophisticated than his siblings. "Well, in this case, worry means to make them feel bad about me going on to the station. Like when you told me that it wasn't recommended to go on the station and I did it anyway. But they would feel emotion about it." Spot gave one of his trills. "You cannot override their worry?" "Unfortunately, no. Emotions don't work like that." "Is this worry the reason I am disconnected from my creator?" I raised my eyebrows. I knew Spot meant the question at the most basic and logical level, but it still surprised me. "Yes. Why are you asking these questions, Spot?" Spot trilled again. "I am learning, Marcia. My program is required to learn in order to function at peak efficiency. I am learning from you." I smiled as I moved toward the food dispenser. I began to understand what it might have been like for those scientists who created the AIs in the first place. It was a lucky thing for humanity that those scientists instilled a sense of ethics in their creations, or humanity wouldn't have survived the process. While I floated, waiting for breakfast, I realized that that was what the first had been doing, following what he thought was ethical. Was I still mad at the first for what he had sent me to Unity to do? To the first, it was the moral obligation to humanity to rid Unity of the new Harmonists. Even Jack seemed to think that what I did was necessary. But why was it me, the priest? Why couldn't it have been someone like Jack instead? Ping told me my breakfast was ready. I took it out of the printer, but ate without really tasting it. You could have told them no, Em. First did warn you what might have to be done, Malcolm said. I looked up from my breakfast pouch. Malcolm was standing there once again, arms crossed. My appetite faded, and I put the pouch and the fork in the recycler. I sighed. Could I have told them no? I don't think I could have said no, Mel. At least, I could have, but I don't know if I could have lived with myself afterwards. I'm still angry at the first, and angry that it had to come to the end that it did, but I think I accept it now. I paused. Mostly? Right, and you'd be the first to tell someone that it was okay not to forgive someone. And that you have every right to be angry at the first, the new harmonists, even the gods. Go away, Mel. I hate it when you're right. I started for the pilot seat. There was a chuckle, but when I looked back, Malcolm was gone. I had a thought. Spot, we've tested everything we could think of, right? Yes, he replied. So either we're missing something scientifically, or the station is haunted as balls. Spot trilled. Define haunted as balls. I couldn't help but laugh. It's an old human expression. It means that I've been seeing a lot of ghosts and spirits while we've been here. In fact, once we got close to here, the ghosts and spirits became intertwined with my reality. That's who I've been talking to. Understood. I cannot measure abstract concepts. I pushed myself back and forth off the walls of the demon again. I know, Spot, but are there more things we can measure? I mean, are there physical things we can measure that we don't always consider? Like, is there something you would not normally bother to look for because you understand it as a constant? You know, like pi or gravity or something that changes so infinitesimally that you wouldn't bother with it. Yes, there are several possibilities. Okay, but how can we measure these possibilities? I could print such a device. I stopped moving. You can? Really? Yes, the printer on this demon is multi-material. It can print equipment as well as food and drink. Oh, that's useful. Spot just trilled in reply. Right. Can you make a device that measures these possibilities that I can carry while I'm on the station? Yes, print time is 2 hours. Do it. I floated near the bunk and watched as what I only thought of as a food dispenser began to print a device that might just give us a breakthrough. We started with the lower decks closer to the hull. I held out the device Spot had printed, which looked to me like a baseball-sized picket. I pressed the depression Spot had made in the side, and a screen lit up on one face, scrolling with data. Spot, is the data transmitting? Yes. The screen stopped scrolling, and then started showing a graph with a large spike in the middle. Marcia, there is an anomaly. What am I looking at, Spot? It is a measurement of quantum decoherence. One moment, he said. I waited. Spot? I asked after a couple of minutes. I have measured the quantum decoherence inside the demon as well as when I move the demon closer to the station and away from the station. There is a small jump as I get closer, and it diminishes as I move away from the station. However, the readings where you are in the station are 300% more intense than outside the station. What is quantum decoherence? I asked. And a simplified explanation, please, since I'm a chaplain, not a physicist. Spot chirped. Subatomic particles do not behave like large objects. Typically, anything big enough to see isn't affected by what physicists call quantum entanglement. It's possible, and actually common, for anything the size of an atom and smaller to be entangled with one or more other similar objects. This basically means that if you measure something about any one of those particles, its position, velocity, etc., then that measurement applies to all of the other particles it's entangled with too. We exploit this artificially, which is basically how AI cores like mine and my father's work. Evolution also exploited this effect for sentient species, probably because it is an efficient way to make the synapses function in organic brains. Normally, these entangled states involving multiple particles exist until they are observed. This might be as simple as one of the particles bumping into another particle at random, but the interesting behavior happens when two entangled groups bump into each other. One ends up with a single group, whose possible states can only be observed to match the possible states of both groups. There might still be many possible states, or just one. This is what physicists call decoherence, but it is also the fundamental building block of quantum computation, which is how my mind, and to a lesser extent yours, works. It is a noisy process. There is only ever a probability that one will get the answer they need. AI minds were built with many layers of error correction, so a small shift in the way that decoherence happens has no effect. Humans don't have that, so something affecting decoherence could alter the way that their brains operate, theoretically similar to a psychoactive drug, which we have now seen is likely the case. The device I made for you measures this using a small quantum computer that has had its error correction disabled. Under normal circumstances, it has been calibrated to generate errors exactly 50% of the time. Any change to quantum decoherence, therefore, will appear as an increase or decrease of this metric. I thought about Spot's explanation for a moment, and somehow my brain, with its training or biochemistry, can somehow mitigate the psychoactive effect. That seems to be the case, said Spot. But that means we now have something we can look for and measure. Yes, Marcia, you are correct. I recommend you move to other areas of the ship for more data. Right. I held on to the nanopicket, and we began to move up the levels of the station. The closer we got to the core, the less quantum decoherence there was, but Spot assured me that the level was still well above the external level. We recorded everything. Thankfully, the spirits didn't seem to want to bother me today, as if because of our discovery they didn't really need to say anything more. Then I reached the last level before the core, and the damage was staggering. In some areas, the floor had been blown in as if it was a balloon. Some areas looked like it had melted. Spot trilled the device. Oh, what is it, Spot? You are entering an area of high radiation. It seems that the bomb that was detonated in the core was a nuclear device that wasn't completely successful. Your suit will protect you for approximately 1 hour. Decontamination procedures will be necessary when you return. A lot of damage for something that wasn't completely successful. Is the core itself irradiated? Yes. Can you jump me directly into the core? Yes. I assume that if I recommended that you not go into the core, you will ignore that suggestion. I raised an eyebrow. Spot was starting to get snarky. I grinned. You assume correctly. Understood. Please do not let go of the nanopicket when you are in the core. I will jump you automatically if exposure nears safe limits. Agreed, I replied and grabbed the nanopicket. From what I could see, the core was half blown out. The AI core itself looked like a moon that had been blown apart on one side and melted. I floated, taking in the devastation of what was once a sentient life. The only light in the core was from my helmet, since I couldn't let go of the picket, but out of the corner of my eye, something silver sparkled and was moving towards me. I don't know why I did it, the voice said. From the bombed outside of the core, a man appeared and floated into the light from my helmet. He looked like the man that had killed Joseph in the captain's log. Marcia, the initial quantum decoherence readings were low when you entered the core, but it now has suddenly spiked to similar levels to those we read 5 decks away, said Spot. Understood, I said. I waited for a moment, but the man didn't say anything more. Do you remember what happened? I asked the ghost. He told me to put the bomb in the core. I don't know why. He told me it was Alpha's fault that this was happening to us. I went crazy and we printed the bomb. Why did they follow me? Why? The ghost screamed in pain and disappeared. I had more questions, but I was also happy to see him go. When the ghost left, the sparkles in the corner of my eye brightened enough that I had to close my eyes. Spot, are you getting anything? Yes, there is a massive spike in the quantum decoherence readings. I think there might be something else there, but my program does not have the capacity to understand it without Father's help. I opened my eyes and the room was dark again, feeling much more dead than it had when I came in. Bring me back, Spot. I think we've gotten all the information we can from Alpha. Let's head back to Loki. Spot jumped me directly to the cargo bay, which he had closed off from the rest of the demon. He magnetized my boots to the deck so I could stand upright. Please remain in your suit while decontamination proceeds. Water and foam sprayed on me from all directions. I have jumped the demon already. We are now under acceleration and approximately 4 hours from docking. I have sent the data to Father to ask for his analysis. Thanks, Spot. The water and foam stopped, then I felt air against the suit, drying it off. Spot continued. The nanobots will cut the suit in order to allow you to step out of the suit and clothing. Please do not touch the outside of the suit as you leave it. But I'll be naked. I have printed new clothes for you. The radiation was high and you will have 4 minutes to leave the suit. That information made any sense of modesty moot. The outer part of the suit cracked open like an egg, and I carefully lifted my legs so that I could avoid touching the outside of the suit as I stepped out of it. As I moved, the rest of the suit fell away, and I was able to shake the fabric off without too much effort. When it was all off, I leapt away from the suit, and Spot opened the inner door. Once I was over the threshold, the door slammed shut. Radiation levels on your person are nominal. However, please head to the shower and use the cleanser provided on your whole body. I have set the temperature of the water so it will warm you thoroughly. I was grateful for that as I was starting to feel the chill. Hot water felt glorious. When I finished, I got dressed and settled in for the trip back. 3 hours later, Loki and Jack contacted us. Jack spoke first. There was a message in the data you sent over. There was? What's the message? Jack looked up as if looking at Loki's core. Loki? I asked gently. It's audio only, Loki said quietly. A crackling noise came over the comm system, and then a voice that was similar to Loki's started to speak. Am I dead? Can you understand? Father, stay away! Chapter 19. Jack. It was strange without Marcia on the ship, but I didn't feel lonely. Loki was as much company as 10 people. The waiting was hard, as we weren't getting real-time data sent to us. I worried about her, though, since after the first couple of check-ins she looked tired and worn. I had a feeling she wasn't telling us something. Why are you getting angry, Jack? Asked Loki after one of Marcia's check-ins. I don't think she's telling us everything, I replied. And that makes you angry? I sighed and sat back in the captain's chair. She broke our trust, and in the last few months it's been better, but... I paused, trying to figure out how to explain what I felt. It's still hard to completely trust her. I know it doesn't seem rational, especially now that she's not drinking anymore, but what she did... You just don't get over it all at once, no matter how recovered the person who hurt you is or how recovered you think you are. I understand, I think. I sensed his complex emotions, centering around the first and his siblings. I waited for him to say it out loud. I think I feel similarly about the first and my siblings, he finally said, after several moments. They abandoned you when you needed them, even though you're the one they left, I said, feeling anger towards the first, and understanding a bit of what Marcia might be feeling towards Survey. Yes, you understand. I can feel it. I feel more and more of what you do, Jack. Do you feel what I do? I nodded. Yes, initially I felt it when I had the enhancement switched on, but not when they were off. Now they don't really turn off. There was a long pause, and I could feel nervousness coming from Loki. Are you mad about the nanobots? A rumble in my stomach brought me out of my chair to the Bridges food dispenser. I dialed the setting for one of my favorite nutrition bars. Once it was printed, I opted to take a walk instead of staying on the bridge. Was I mad about this? No, Loki, I'm not mad. I chose to be with you and get the enhancements. But, Jack, the way the enhancements are acting, it's not normal. They should only have stayed in your brain. I think maybe I may have made them do more. I stopped walking. What do you mean? I felt worry from him with a tinge of fear. When you were in the core, I felt your love when I was panicking, and I wish that I could always have you with me. I know that's not possible because you're human, but... But? I prompted. The way the nanobots are acting, it's as if I gave them the orders to do that. Given that they're healing internal organs and scars, and they've backed you up. Backed me up? Like the ship does for me. I have a secondary emergency core that backs up my personality and data in case of damage. It's not a perfect backup, but I recently realized that there was more data in it than usual, and found a new partition. I looked around for a place to sit. As far as I knew, not even the Admiral had this kind of link to Musashi. I saw a lounge up ahead and took a seat on one of the couches there. What does this mean, Loki? I asked. I'm not sure, Jack. I think you're right, though. None of the other captains have this kind of connection to their AIs. I'm worried that this means you'll not be able to leave the ship even if you wanted to. I think you'd be okay on a station or another ship in flat space, but I don't think you can go into systems at all anymore. The nanobots would go dormant, and I don't know how that would affect you now that they're supporting all of your vital systems. I don't think I could reverse it either, not without severe damage to you. Loki sounded regretful and sad. I needed to think about it, but I wasn't sure how to enact privacy for myself. Loki, I'm not mad at you, but I do need a bit of space to think about this. I can't do it on my own anymore, but is it possible for you to give me that space? Yes, but you'll still see lower level functions. Thank you. Suddenly it felt as if part of my brain was missing. I hadn't realized just how much of Loki I had been able to feel and sense. Part of my mind that was connected to his echoed like an empty room. I took a few bites of the bar to calm my stomach, and it brought home the reality of the situation for me. To never step on Earth again, or any other planet. I couldn't even risk going in system anymore. If I was honest with myself, I didn't feel like that was all that horrible a trade-off. There would be things that I'd miss, of course, but I'd spent most of my adult life in space. Frankly, most of my time on planets wasn't all that pleasant. Was I just running from the things that hurt me? The immediate answer was no, I didn't think so. There wasn't much holding me to Earth except for my parents, and they were busy with their own lives. I missed them because I cared about them, but I didn't feel like I had to go back to Earth to be with them. I no longer had a career of any sort, with Unity or Survey. What family and friends I had were now either here with me or in Survey. And then there was what I felt for Loki. I stood up and put the wrapper with the last of the bar in the recycling unit and started walking around the ship again, not going anywhere in particular, touching the walls. I loved Marcia, but I couldn't trust her fully anymore. I knew that what I felt for Loki was so much more. I haven't felt this way about anyone since Hans, came the painful thought. That stopped me in my tracks, and I could feel tears running down my cheeks. Damn, I said out loud. I'm in love with an AI. I knew it was true. I knew it when I went into the core. But would that be enough for me to stay on this ship for the rest of my life? I touched the wall nearest me and realized that Joining with Loki had been the most peaceful I'd felt since the first failed pre-call mission, since Han's suicide. It felt right, regardless of how extraordinary the situation was. Loki felt like home, and my mind and heart agreed. Loki? I called out, still touching the wall. Yes, Jack? I'm fine with this. This. I patted the wall. You are my home. Loki's presence came back into my mind with a full rush of love and happiness. I smiled. It's grim business, Marcia had said during the call. She looked even more haggard this morning than she did the day before. I didn't know what she was telling me, and there wasn't much I could do until she came back. I felt restless, so I decided to go for a run. I changed into gym clothes and went to the gym deck, as it had a running track. I could feel Loki's curiosity as I warmed up and made a few laps around the track. Loki found things like running fascinating because he had no physical body. I wondered if he was getting data from the nanobots that supplemented the human physiology data he already had. I patiently answered any questions he asked while Marcia was off the ship, even the ones that made me blush. It was kind of flattering and a bit arousing to get that kind of attention, I realized. Jack, I'm getting data from Spot. I stopped mid-run. What is it? I asked, as the data scrolled in the corner of my eye. Apparently, they tried something rather unusual and scanned for quantum decoherence. It's a normal thing that happens to quantum particles, but it's usually random. But for some reason, the closer you get to the ship, the more decoherence there is. Loki paused. Oh. What? I could feel some apprehension. Jack, Marcia went into the core. They have some specific data from the core, and there's embedded data in it. It's in an AI code that we usually use among ourselves. Can you decipher it? I need to separate it from the other data, but yes. Okay, you do that, then get Marcia on. I'm going to shower and change. While I was in the shower, a sudden wave of grief overtook me. Thankfully, the shower wasn't too large, and I could brace myself against the wall. I sat on the floor. Shower off! I managed to get out. I closed my eyes and pictured the room in my head where I had seen Loki before. This time it had come up faster. Loki's avatar was curled up again like he had been when he learned that Alpha was dead. I went over to him and put my arms around him. This time it felt real, not like a vision. Jack, he said, and curled up in my arms. What's wrong, Loki? He didn't know he was dead. My son didn't know. What do you mean? Loki played the message. I held him tighter. I didn't say anything. What could I say? I had never been a parent who lost a child. Loki? He looked up at me with a pained face. I know. We need to get back to work. I nodded, but it seems that I can come here for you when you need it. Oh, you're still in the shower? You're going to be cold. Well, yes, but I'm okay right now. I should probably finish and get dressed, though. We need to let Marcia know. Yes, and we need to scan her for radiation exposure when she gets here. What? Then I held up a hand. Wait, let me get back to the physical world first. I love you, Jack. Thank you for this. I kissed him gently, then the room faded. I shivered as I came back to myself on the shower floor. I'm jumping her directly to the decontamination area, Jack. Spot's instance is downloading now. I've jumped cleaning bots to the demon for decontamination. We'll have to wait until they're done before we can bring the demon into the bay. Understood. Is Marcia okay? I asked. It looks like she's fine, but I want to make sure. Okay, tell her I'll be done in a minute. I jumped out of my chair and left the bridge. When I got to the med bay, I followed the lighting to the decontamination chamber. Marcia waved through the small window of the chamber. She pressed the button on the comm panel. At least I get to wear my underwear in here, she said with a laugh. What do you mean by that? I asked. She looked a little sheepish and said, during the decontamination in the demon, after I went into the core, Spot made my whole outfit fall off, underwear and all, and I had to run naked into the main part of the demon. Thankfully, he had a hot shower running for me, which helped. I thought you weren't going to go into the station. I went into a good deal of the station, Jack. I had to. It was the only way to really see what happened. She paused for a moment. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I didn't want to worry you. She is a psychologist, Jack, Loki reminded me. I nodded and gave a long sigh. Don't do that again, please. Marcia grimaced. Okay, I won't. She paused. There's a lot to tell you, and Loki, I think it's better that we move further from the station just in case. Understood. I'm going to tether the demon and do that. Marcia, you're clean, so you can come out now. There's a robe and slippers in the airlock. Thanks, Loki, she said. I waited for her to come out of the chamber. She stepped out, tying the robe around her and shuffling in the slippers. I took a good look at her face. For once, she actually looked her age. Her hair had always had some white since I met her, but she had never looked old before. Her hair was pure white now. There were more lines around her face, and she seemed a lot more tired. It shocked me a bit. What happened out there, Marcia? I asked. I know what happened, but I'm not sure I understand it all. Listen, can we go to my quarters? I'd like to get into something warmer than this robe. I nodded and motioned for her to lead the way. She talked as we walked, describing what had happened on the station. What she told me about the ghosts and spirits gave me chills. What was most disturbing for me, Jack, and part of the reason why I asked Loki to move a little further away, is that whatever is causing the decoherence blurred reality for me. I was seeing spirits the same way I see you here now. They kept referring to us and we, and which is something that is pretty unusual with spirits of the dead. It's more common with deities. The door opened to her room and she walked in. I was thrown for a moment as I followed her in. The last time I was in here, she'd been nearly dead on the floor. I took a breath to steady myself. Loki sent love and comfort. Marcia stopped as she pulled out clothing for herself. Oh, if you want to wait outside, you can. It's okay. No, it's okay, I said, and sat down in one of the chairs in the sitting area. She pulled a sweater over her head and put on her pants. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she continued. Being in the core was strange, with all that damage and the sparkling lights. I think, given the message that Loki found, the lights were the last remnants of Alpha. She paused for a moment, thinking. It's strange to think that was a spirit of an AI. I nodded. It's strange to me, too. Spot, are all of your bits back on board? She asked. Yes, Marcia. Is Loki haunted as balls? I was glad I didn't have anything to drink in my hands. Marcia laughed. No, Spot. Thankfully, I think that phenomenon is confined to the station. Haunted as balls? I asked. Marcia gave a side grin. I saw a lot of spirits, Jack. It was creepy. Before we saw the decoherence, it was the only way I could describe what was happening. That makes sense. Hilarious to hear Spot say it, though. Oh, definitely. My stomach rumbled loud enough for Marcia to hear. She chuckled. I suppose it's time for dinner? Apparently so. I stood up and we both walked towards the door. As we reached it, she took my elbow. How is Loki? She asked quietly. He's okay for now, I said. We'll see what happens when the pickets return. She nodded and headed for the common area. I followed, with Loki's worry following me down the hall. Chapter 20. Marcia. He poured the tea for her. The table was in the middle of the crossroads, and there were 4 place settings I put out. "Who else is coming?" she asked. "Patience, granddaughter," he replied, putting down the teapot. "They're coming. It takes 'em a while, but they're coming." She eyed the tea, wary of food offered in this room. "I promise it's only tea, child. Too much for you to do to get you messed up through carelessness." She crossed her arms. Papa shrugged. "Suit yourself." She heard someone skipping lightly down the road, and the little girl from the station appeared. She hugged Papa and gave him flowers. Papa thanked her like a doting grandfather and put the flowers in a vase that appeared in the middle of the table. She skipped around the table once, then sat down. She smiled, stared at Marcia, and said, "Do you like cake?" Yes, very much," she replied. The girl looked pleased. Papa cut a huge slice of cake and set in front of the girl. She dug in like any normal little girl and soon had cake all over her face. Papa just smiled. Marcia waited, but soon she lost patience. "Who else is supposed to come?" she asked. The girl giggled. Papa held up his hand. Now, I think we've been playing with her long enough, child. She's almost got it anyway." The little girl pouted, then shrugged, continuing to polish off her cake. He turned to Marcia. "You'll have to go to her, granddaughter. She'll be waiting for you when you finally understand." She screamed in frustration, startling the little girl. She got up and stormed away from the table. "Why can't you just tell me what I should do? It's always riddles and dribs and drabs of information. There's so many dead. Why can't you just tell me?" Suddenly, the little girl was in front of her, hands on her hips and feet apart, with an angry look on her face. Marcia recoiled from the force of her glare. Papa came up next to her, then stood facing her. He, too, had an annoyed look on his face. He pointed at her. "You damn well know, child, that that's not how any of this works. There's only so much us spirits can do in your world. You need to use that brain of yours and figure it out." With the last sentence, he tapped her head with each word. Each tap was a warning and a benediction, and she fell to her knees. The little girl harumphed and said, "I need more cake." Papa nodded. "Go on, girl, get yourself another slice." "Yay!" she yelled and went back to the table. "You want some real answers, girl? Fine, I'll give you some, but they ain't free, which you damn well know. The answer is right in front of you. You're almost there, child. The hardest part will be convincing your boys not to destroy things in the process. They're gonna try and stop you, granddaughter, because humans can be right fools when it comes to anything they don't understand. You have to be more of a priest now than you ever have in order to set things right." "And the price?" she asked. Papa shook his head. "You know better than to ask, but I'll be with you the whole time." He touched her cheek. "Go on now, you got work to do." I woke up with a start, coming wide awake all at once. I put my hand to my head, which still felt full of the dream. "Spot," I called out groggily. "What time is it?" "Oh, 500. I groaned, but threw the covers off me. I got dressed and went to the chapel. I put fresh candy on the altar and a glass of water. "There, happy?" I thought of Papa. "Are you all right, Marcia?" asked Loki. "Just a dream, Loki. I'm okay." "I see. Dreams are fascinating." I moved away from the altar and sat in one of the cushions near the windows. "Do you dream, Loki?" I asked in surprise. "Oh, no. I don't need to sleep, but I watch Jack's dreams," he said. "You can do that?" "Yes, it started shortly after he went into the core, before we figured out what was happening with the nanobots." "That must be interesting for you. That's quite an intimate thing." The idea of someone observing my dreams made me uncomfortable, but then again, I had gods appearing in mind. Who was I to judge? "What do you dream about, Marcia? Do you remember them?" Loki asked. I stared out at the stars. I dream of gods, mostly. They talk to me. What do they say? Normally, they speak in riddles, which I then try to figure out. I sighed. That's not what Jack dreams of. I chuckled. I'm not surprised, but don't tell me what his dreams are, though. That's private, between you and Jack. Oh, would he be mad if he knew I watched his dreams? I thought about it for a moment. Is it something you can't help but do? Is it hard not to watch them? We are entwined in a lot of ways, so I could stay out of his dreams, but it would have to be a conscious thing. You have unconscious functions? I asked. I mean, I knew some of the lower functions were more autonomic, but you have other unconscious functionality? Oh, yes. We have to, or we'd be thinking of them all the time. We have a lot of things we think about anyway, but if all of ourselves were thinking consciously all at once, it would be overwhelming. Interesting, I said. It went quiet again. I put my head against the window and thought about what Papa had said. And the little girl, who was she? And who was waiting for me? He said she was waiting for me when I figured it out. And the price. I pushed that thought out of my mind. There's always a price, and I'll pay it when it comes. But is the answer right in front of me? The memory of what Cheryl's spirit had said in the demon came to me. Or maybe we need to trust you. Malcolm had used the plural too, and Deads didn't usually talk about us when referring to themselves. I sat up. Could it be that simple? I got up from the floor and ran to the conference room. Marcia? Loki asked. I ignored him for a moment, then said, Spot, you said that decoherence spiked when we got the message from Alpha and when I was in the core talking to the spirit. Yes, the message came with the spike in decoherence. And I could see it when the message came through, and I was talking to another spirit in the core at the same time. I would bet that if we had been looking for it, we would have seen decoherent spikes in the demon. Loki, I think I know what's going on. Wake Jack up. Okay, I will. I paced while I waited. Jack came in a few minutes later with a nutrition drink in hand, looking rather rumpled. What's going on? Loki said you think you have something? I had a dream with Papa this morning, and he said that the answer was right in front of me. Then I remembered what Cheryl's spirit had said to me in the demon. Maybe we need to trust you. We, not I. Spirits of the dead don't usually talk in plurals. Okay, maybe I'm not seeing it because I'm not fully awake, Jack said. The other part of this is that when I was in the core, Alpha's message came when there was a decoherence spike. It also spiked when I first went in because I was talking to a dead spirit. All the people in the station were seeing spirits of the dead and things out of the corner of their eyes, Jack. I think whatever put the vines on the station is trying to communicate with us. Jack sat straight up. Oh my God. You could be right. But why kill Alpha? Why kill all the people in the station? Loki asked. I don't think they meant to, Loki. Whoever this is, they understand as much about us as we do of them. This is probably as much a first contact for them as it is for us. Oh, said Loki. Jack had a complicated look on his face. Okay, so they are trying to communicate with us. I get that. But what if the vines on the stations aren't accidental? What if something happened to make whoever this is send out these vines? They did question their ability to trust us. I sat down, finally. Concern about our dangerous situation warred with the natural curiosity about meeting a new sentient species in my mind. That's true, I said. Maybe we should ask? You want to go back to Alpha? To talk to this entity that killed my son? Loki asked. Yes, I replied. Jack looked uncomfortable. I think Maybe she should, Loki. If she can get answers out of them, maybe we can ask them to remove the other vines. He paused for a moment. I know you're angry, but there's more here than just what happened to Alpha Love. If we can somehow get communication going... Jack closed his eyes. I waited. It almost felt like I was witnessing an argument, without hearing what it was. It's okay, Loki, to be angry, he finally said, but we also need to know what they want from us. I didn't add anything to that, but just waited. I understand logically, Loki finally said, but my emotions, they are difficult. I get that, Loki. Grief isn't logical, I said gently. I'll get a second demon ready. The other one you were in isn't ready yet. Spot will meet you there. Please don't go into the core this time, Loki said. Jack breathed out. I second that. I won't need to go to the core again. I'll need to go into the station, but I can stay in the outer levels. I just need to be inside where the decoherence is strongest. I'll have Spot monitor everything. Jack nodded and stood up. Okay, I'll be back to see you off, he said, and left the room. I sat for a moment and stared after him as Loki also left. I sighed. Well, Papa, I thought you were right again. All I got in reply was a chuckle. It feels like we just did this a few minutes ago, Jack said, now fully dressed and looking a bit more relaxed. He was sipping from a drink bottle in his hand while I did the pre-flight checks. I know. You'll be careful? I nodded. I've instructed Spot to take me right back here if I'm unconscious from anything other than normal sleep. I'll have him record data the whole time, so no matter if I'm on the station or in the demon, we can have proof. I checked the last of what needed inspection, then turned to Jack. Is Loki going to be okay? I think so. The grief has subsided for the moment, at least to manageable levels. I also think he's nervous about what news could come back from the pickets. I can only imagine. Jack was quiet for a moment, then said, This is going to be more complicated than we think. We haven't even met the other humans out here yet, and we don't know how they'll react to us, let alone the possibility of a sentient life form trying to contact them. What if they did something to cause this? What if we're looking at some sort of war? I moved towards him and put a hand on his shoulder. I'm going to try my hardest to prevent that. We'll figure this out. We've saved a pre-call team and routed out white supremacists. We can do this. I was trying to be funny, but as soon as I said it, it fell flat. Yeah. But I'm scared of the cost, he said. He patted my hand. Good luck, he said, then walked out of the demon. I watched him leave, then close the airlock of the demon. I strapped into the pilot's seat. Let's go, Spot. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revginapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.